Did any of you ever stop to think that Carrie White has feelings?
Creepy Carrie! Creepy Carrie!
Witch. That's Satan's power.
It's nothing to do with Satan, Mama. If I concentrate hard enough, I can move things.
If you don't have a date for the prom next Friday, would you like to go with me?
I've been invited to the prom.
Prom.
G'day everyone and welcome back to Home Drive-In. Novel to film adaptations are a mixed bag in the quality department, especially those from horror master Stephen King, yet the first adaptation of his first novel is arguably among the best of them. Please note I will be discussing major plot revelations from the film Carrie and the book that it's based on, so there will be a bucket of spoilers ahead. Just a little reminder everybody, if you do enjoy these videos, please give that like button a gentle nudge, leave me a comment to read, and yes, I do read them all, or even consider hitting that subscribe button. A little love from you guys will help me get my channel out there, meaning that I can keep doing what I love and bring you more awesome stuff. Again, thank you so much for being here, but for now, let the show begin. Based on Stephen King's 1974 novel, Carrie tells the story of an awkward teenage girl bullied by her peers and sheltered by her overtly religious mother. However, she slowly discovers that she has the power of telekinesis, the ability to move and manipulate objects with her mind. When a remorseful student convinces her boyfriend to take Carrie to the senior prom, another hatches a sinister plot to humiliate her, which doesn't end well for anybody. After reading the original manuscript for Carrie, screenwriter Lawrence D. Cohen was convinced it would make an excellent horror film, lauding the then unknown Stephen King as a remarkable talent. Cohen sent the manuscript to several studios who all declined the project, as it seemed that the largely male-dominated executives were put off by the idea of addressing the troubles of a teenage girl. Convinced that his hopes to have Carrie developed into a film were all but dashed, he approached Paul Monash at 20th Century Fox regarding some other projects. Uninterested in what was on offer, Cohen turned to leave, yet Monash abruptly stopped him with the possibility of another project, and in an astonishing coincidence, handed him the novel of Carrie. Cohen agreed to adapt the screenplay himself, which he prepared for Fox over 4 weeks, yet his excitement was short-lived when they ultimately rejected his script. In a promising twist of fate, Marcia Nassiter, who previously worked for the publisher that sold the rights for the novel of Carrie, recently became the new and first female vice president at United Artists. She agreed to take on the project on the condition that the budget was reasonable. Brian De Palma contacted United Artists expressing interest in directing the movie and was offered the job based on his previous films Phantom of the Paradise and Obsession. De Palma held joint casting auditions for Carrie alongside a certain other director who was in search of actors to appear in a little space film that would become Star Wars. George Lucas and Brian De Palma both wanted fresh faces for their respective projects, however, Star Wars seemed to be the film that most potential candidates were interested in. While George Lucas was busy casting, De Palma quietly sought actors that he could add to his list. However, art director Jack Fisk had his own ideas, persuading his wife, Sissy Spacek, to audition for the lead role. While Brian De Palma had actress Betsy Slade in mind, Spacek was on a mission, turning up to her audition with her hair smeared with Vaseline and wearing an old sailor dress. Appearances aside, Sissy Spacek blew everyone away with her screen test and was granted the role of Carrie White, with her husband the one giving her the good news. Piper Laurie hadn't appeared in a feature film since The Hustler alongside Paul Newman in 1961, and after reading the script for Carrie was a little confused as to its tone. Believing the film must be a satire considering the rather extreme content, Laurie accepted the role of Margaret White, Carrie's domineering and devoutly religious mother. Appreciating the dynamic between real-life mother and daughter Jennifer Salt and Mary Davenport, whom he'd cast in his previous film Sisters, De Palma united another mother-daughter duo for Carrie. Amy Irving was cast in her first feature film as the remorseful Sue Snell, with her real-life mother Pricilla Pointer cast as Sue's mother. Irving also read for the role of Princess Leia, and is reportedly where she met her future ex-husband Steven Spielberg, who turned up to visit his good friend George Lucas during auditions. William Katt, who had auditioned for Luke Skywalker, was ultimately awarded the role of Tommy Ross, Sue's on-screen boyfriend and Carrie's somewhat reluctant prom date. And while not cast as the hero of a galaxy far, far away, he would later play a far more earthbound American hero on television. Nancy Allen had already appeared in commercials, yet was getting ready to leave Hollywood, becoming a little jaded after several failed movie auditions. Yet after a chance meeting with casting director Harriet B. Hellberg, Allen became the last member to be selected, winning the role of the devilish Chris Hargensen. Already a household name for his role as Vinnie Barbarino in the TV series Welcome Back, Kotter, John Travolta was cast in his first major film role as Chris's oafish boyfriend Billy Nolan. And before becoming
Totally.
synonymous with her role in Halloween, PJ Soles also faced George Lucas and Brian De Palma during a casting session. Lucas seemed uninterested, yet De Palma was impressed, with PJ Soles and the red baseball hat she'd worn to the audition, inviting her back on the condition that she brought the hat with her. Ultimately, PJ Soles and the hat were successful, winning the role of Chris's mischievous best friend Norma. Actress and singer Betty Buckley had worked with De Palma before, doing some voice work for minor characters in his previous films Phantom of the Paradise and Obsession. De Palma specifically expanded the role of Miss Desjardins from the novel to give Buckley more screen time, renaming her character to Miss Collins since it was far easier to pronounce. Yeah, you're telling me that sentence took about 10 takes. Desjardins. 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 Oh, now I can say it. Buckley also used her vocal talents to provide the voice of the young boy who torments Carrie while riding his bike.
Creepy Carrie! Creepy Carrie!
Who incidentally was portrayed on camera by De Palma's nephew Cameron. Carrie was provided a comparatively small budget of $1.8 million, with filming starting on March 1st, 1976, lasting about 50 days. Filmed in numerous locations including Morningside Elementary School, Palisades Charter High School and Pier Avenue Junior High, doubling for the fictional Bates High. And yes, this was a reference to Psycho. Interiors including the inside of Carrie White's house and the prom finale were shot at Culver Studios, California. The exterior of the White House, no, not that one, had been discovered after some careful location scouting in Santa Paula, California, chosen for its asymmetrical structure and Gothic appearance. As is often the case with new actors starting in the film industry, the young cast brought an energy to their respective roles, with the atmosphere on set being one of fearlessness and commitment. The young cast even spent a week together before filming began, and were given the freedom and flexibility to work out their character dynamics. However, the enthusiasm was short-lived for many of the young actresses who were getting cold feet when it came time to shoot Carrie's opening credit sequence. Many of them had agreed to appear nude, yet were reduced to tears as time was approaching to film the scene. De Palma wound up showing his anxiety-ridden cast a rough cut of Sissy Spacek's shower scene, which ultimately helped put their minds at ease. Nancy Allen and Amy Irving would go on to agree that while very confronting, the opening sequence of the film is quite beautiful and unexpected for a horror film. According to IMDb, editor Paul Hirsch was later asked why his name didn't appear in the opening credit sequence, suggesting they were all maybe far too distracted to notice that it actually was. However, an alternate take of the opening shot was filmed specifically for network television, featuring white credits instead of the original orange, with all the girls in the scene now wearing clothing or covered with towels. De Palma's method of directing his actors often included giving them a hypothetical scenario to elicit a certain response, as would be the case when shooting Sissy Spacek's shower scene. Even non-horror fans are aware of Carrie's opening moments in which she experiences her first period, unaware that such a thing even exists. When requesting precisely how she should react, De Palma advised Sissy Spacek, "Act like you've been hit by a Mack truck." Spacek consulted her husband for inspiration, who described his real-life experience of being struck by a car as a child, which is precisely what she reflected on while filming this moment.
You're a woman now.
Why didn't you tell me, Mama?
Sissy Spacek went on to praise her on-screen relationship with Piper Laurie, noting that Laurie's commanding performance made her fun to do battle with. Laurie intentionally played her character with such over-the-top gusto because by many reports she was still convinced the film was a form of satire, despite De Palma insisting that it wasn't. De Palma was impressed with his leading actresses and their ability to play their almost comically exaggerated scenes with such realism and conviction. Despite portraying the gym teacher, Betty Buckley was actually only 26 when cast in her role, not much older than her co-stars, and also received some notably methodical direction. When Chris faces off with Miss Collins during detention, De Palma insisted that Betty Buckley actually slapped Nancy Allen across the face to make the moment more realistic. One slap is bad enough, yet there were numerous takes filmed of the scene, which fluctuates depending on who you ask.
I slapped her, I think, about 12 times.
And they did about 10 takes.
She slapped me 29 times.
However, this didn't tarnish Nancy Allen's relationship with her director, as the two would work together again on Dress to Kill and Blowout, and begin a 5-year marriage in 1979. She was also in RoboCop, which has nothing whatsoever to do with this video. I just think that's bloody awesome. Much of the film's unique visual style was due to the strong collaboration between Brian De Palma and cinematographer Mario Tosi. Tosi combines some extreme lighting and camera angles along with some of Brian De Palma's trademark methods to create the look of the film. One of De Palma's favourite techniques is the use of split diopter shots, which allows the camera to focus on elements in both the foreground and background simultaneously. Inspired by the deep focus shots of films like Citizen Kane, De Palma used the method in several scenes, which then became a common technique in his future films. While two of Carrie's most celebrated sequences provided further examples of imagination and planning, one shot in particular landed De Palma in hot water with the film's finances. The dance scene between Carrie and Tommy was created with dizzying levels of preparation, as the two were in fact filmed on a large turntable as the camera revolved around them. Since the actors were dancing in the opposite direction that the turntable was spinning, De Palma would later go on to quip they had no idea how they all got over the vertigo of filming that shot. However, De Palma also insisted on another elaborate setup leading up to Carrie's penultimate revenge spree, which would later go on to be known as the figure 8 shot. Meticulously planned and rehearsed, the shot begins with Norma collecting the ballot from Carrie and Tommy's table, then following her as she collects the rest of them. The shot then settles on Norma and Freddie as they swap the ballots out for the fake ones, then moves to establish Chris and Billy under the stage. The camera then reveals the arrival of Sue Snell, trailing along a robe that we then discover is attached to the bucket of pig's blood above the stage. This 2-minute 13-second take ends with Carrie and Tommy being announced as the King and the Queen. De Palma and his crew spent an entire day rehearsing the shot, with actual filming not starting until later in the afternoon, much to the annoyance of the studio executives. When confronted regarding his lack of footage for the day, De Palma defiantly insisted that the shot was essential, as was the time it took to rehearse.
Fire me, basically. That was my attitude.
While filming Carrie's telekinetic outburst, De Palma and his crew truly flexed their ingenuity, which brought on with it its own set of challenges. De Palma covered the prom scene using a few split screen shots in which two images are filmed separately and then later combined, which helped enhance the frenzy and confusion of the moment. However, he would later express some regret over the use of the method, since he felt that it didn't work well for action and required the audience to focus on too much at once. The prom scene, which reportedly took 2 weeks to film, also brought some unique challenges for the actors as well. The blood was a mixture of Karo syrup and food colouring, with Sissy Spacek having the concoction dumped on her approximately 3 times to get the desired result. Yet when it came time to set the gym on fire, the syrup would heat up and become dry and sticky, requiring an assistant to periodically spray Sissy Spacek down with a water pump. Tommy Ross, whose rather undignified death is the result of being hit in the head with a bucket, meant that actor William Katt had to spend roughly a week lying in one position during filming. However, Miss Collins' far more dramatic death came as the result of a basketball headboard crashing down and cutting the poor gym teacher in half. To film the scene, a stuntwoman wisely took the brunt of the falling headboard, which was a prop made of balsa wood. However, an insert shot of Betty Buckley was added for Miss Collins' final dying moments, with De Palma instructing her with another piece of priceless direction.
He comes up to me and he goes, "I want you to squirm like a bug on a pin."
And while most actors got out of the prom scene without incident, unfortunately actress PJ Soles wasn't so lucky. When Carrie unleashes a high-pressure fire hose at the crowd, a heavy stream of water wound up being injected right into PJ Soles' ear. Feeling an intense pain as her eardrum was ruptured, she lost all equilibrium and simply collapsed, which is by all account the actual take used in the film. De Palma was convinced that the fate of Margaret White in the novel, in which Carrie stops her mother's heart, would not translate well to the screen, and wanted something far more dramatic. Having a light bulb moment, De Palma actually interrupted a dinner between his screenwriter Lawrence Cohen and director Martin Scorsese to present his idea. De Palma explained how he envisioned Margaret White's final moments, in which she is impaled by kitchen utensils and left to die in a pose much like a crucifixion. The scene was initially thought to be in poor taste, however De Palma once again insisted that this would be a fitting demise for the villain of the story. The scene was shot with Piper Laurie fitted with a steel vest with wooden blocks attached under her gown, which were then fitted with wires in which the utensils would travel down. Piper Laurie later mentioned how she thought the whole process looked rather absurd and found it hard to give the appropriate reaction when being seemingly impaled.
It's very difficult to keep a straight face.
Piper Laurie actually suggested that her dying moment should suggest a state of ecstasy rather than agony, since in Margaret's mind, she will soon be precisely where she wants to. Margaret White is left in a similar pose to the statue of Saint Sebastian found in the closet in which she had locked Carrie up at the start of the film. Carrie's own final moments and the destruction of her home were achieved using a half-scale model that was built over a pit that would be lowered as the house goes up in flames. However, the scene was originally going to be something quite different that would have been a callback to a prologue that was shot for the film but ultimately deleted. The book features a moment with Carrie as a young child who curiously approaches her teenage neighbour sunbathing. The scene concludes with Margaret scolding Carrie and ushering her back inside when large black stones begin to fall from the sky over the White household, presumably caused by Carrie's powers. The scene was filmed but ultimately dropped, since the effects of the rocks hitting the miniature house did not hold up well on camera. This effect was also going to be used for the finale, but Brian De Palma insisted that they just burn the house down instead. However, since the interiors for the finale had already been filmed, some of the stones are still visible, which also explains their appearance at the vacant lot during the final scene. Heavily inspired by the ending of the film Deliverance, Brian De Palma was determined to give his audience one final scare during these now infamous closing moments. To achieve an ethereal, dreamlike effect, the slow-motion sequence of Sue approaching Carrie's burial site was in fact shot in reverse, which is obvious on closer inspection. On Sissy Spacek's insistence, rather than use a stunt person, she was actually the one underground for the shot, placed in a hole covered in plywood and rocks made from charcoal. On cue, she reaches up to grab Amy's arm, in a final scare that had Sue, and we the audience, screaming our heads off. Pino Donaggio, who was at this point best known for his score for Don't Look Now, was brought in to compose the music for Carrie. Donaggio intended to demonstrate Carrie's innocence by using a combination of string and wood instruments to create the title theme, which was used extensively throughout the film. And also inspired by Bernard Herrmann, Donaggio paid his own homage to Psycho by inserting some abrupt string sections to enhance the film's more striking moments. Which does sound remarkably similar to Psycho, yet Donaggio insists is different enough. The soundtrack proved to be immensely popular and has been released several times over the years by labels such as United Artists Records, Pricilla and Varese Sarabande. And thanks to one of my viewers who fondly but firmly pointed out that I'd been pronouncing it wrong all this time. In 2022, Waxwork Records released the score on CD and vinyl with 22 tracks, including the songs Born to Have It All and I Never Dreamed Someone Like You Could Love Someone Like Me by Katie Irving. No relation to Amy. With his offbeat score for Tourist Trap a close second, Carrie is my favourite Pino Donaggio score and one that I highly recommend you check out.
It's the night of the senior prom, and everybody is there, even Carrie White.
Carrie hit cinemas on November 3rd, 1976, grossing nearly $34 million, receiving critical acclaim and even being cited as one of the greatest films of that year. Roger Ebert went as far as to label the film spellbinding, calling Carrie a true horror story, particularly praising the performances and methodical build-up to its finale. Gene Siskel did commend the film's performances and stylish direction, yet felt the film fell apart in its final act, labelling it as crude and sloppy. Quentin Tarantino, however, cites Carrie as one of his favourite films, which is unsurprising since he also declares himself a massive Brian De Palma fan. Stephen King himself famously cites The Shawshank Redemption and Stand By Me to be his favourite adaptations of his works, but also stated that he liked the film adaptation of Carrie. King declared that he appreciated De Palma's satirical take on the high school experience, and praised Sissy Spacek's performance in particular. And in what was an unusual achievement for a horror film at the time, Carrie earned an Oscar nomination for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress for Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie respectively. Much has been documented about the development of Stephen King's novel, with his wife allegedly being the one to rescue the project after King threw his unfinished manuscript away in frustration. One of the major differences between the book and the film is the fact that Carrie's rampage doesn't end with a prom massacre. In the novel, she embarks on a deliberate mission to destroy the town, even preventing firefighters from extinguishing the many fires she causes. The destruction of the town was omitted from the film for budgetary reasons, which I do think works in the film's favour, scaling back Carrie's rampage to keep it a little more personal. Another difference between the film and the novel is the fate of Miss Desjardins, aka Miss Collins, which also sheds some light on one of the film's more questionable moments. In the film, Miss Collins is seen laughing at Carrie along with everybody else, which raises the question of whether she was in fact laughing or if it was actually all in Carrie's mind. Brian De Palma has confirmed that the latter is true. In fact, very few of the crowd are actually laughing at her, save for Chris, Norma and her horrible little crew. Nonetheless, as we already covered, Miss Collins still receives a death sentence, as in Carrie's mind, she's just like the rest of them. However, in the book, Miss Desjardins does get caught up in the crowd and is in fact laughing at Carrie, who, somewhat ironically, actually spares her life. The other main change was the exclusion of a collection of fictional reports and statements that take place after prom night that were interwoven within the main narrative. The so-called White Commission was omitted from the movie as well, which I also believe was justified so it could keep its focus on the main story. Nonetheless, the 1976 film version of Carrie is still one of the more faithful adaptations of Stephen King's books. In 1999, a sequel called The Rage Carrie 2 was released, this time concerning Carrie White's half-sister Rachel, who discovers her telekinetic powers after her best friend commits suicide. The film did poorly with critics at the box office, despite the strong performance of Emily Bergel, who even received a Saturn Award nomination for her role. I think the sequel is treated a bit harshly and is an interesting watch if you've got 100 odd minutes to burn. And if you don't like the original version of Carrie, try again. But seriously. If you do insist on a more modern retelling, a TV movie premiered on NBC in 2002 starring Angela Bettis in the titular role that is more faithful to the book yet with a decidedly different ending. The film was poorly received with the special effects and length being criticised, however Angela Bettis' performance did receive high acclaim. Because no one plays awkward better than Angela Bettis. In 2013, Carrie was adapted by director Kimberly Peirce, this time with Chloe Grace Moretz in the titular role and Julianne Moore cast as Margaret White. The film received mixed reviews, with some praising its broader perspective on Carrie's story, while others dismissed it as an unnecessary retelling. And while it is unnecessary, I personally don't mind this version, especially with some of the modern touches that it adds, and Carrie's final rampage just looks frickin' awesome. Whichever version you watch or read, the themes within the story of Carrie, be it the consequences of bullying, repression, and isolation, are still as confronting and as relevant today as they ever were. At the time of making this video, a Carrie TV series is currently in development at Amazon MGM Studios, with Mike Flanagan to write and executive produce the show. The proposed series is rumoured to run for 8 episodes, and for the love of whatever deity is listening, can we please make this happen?
You know what Norma calls her? Scary White. That's not my name!
Inspired by Alban Berg's performance of the musical Lulu, screenwriter Lawrence D. Cohen felt that the story of Carrie could be adapted for a musical performance. Collaborating with Michael Gore, who co-wrote the title song for the film and TV series Fame, produced a stage musical of Carrie which opened on Broadway. The cast of the show would see the return of Betty Buckley, yet this time in the very different role of Margaret White. However, after 16 previews and only 5 official performances, the show was cancelled after receiving unanimously negative reviews, becoming one of the most expensive stage musical flops of all time. In 2012, the show was revived off-Broadway by MCC Theatre Company with numerous changes, and again in 2015 in Los Angeles and London, which were met with far more positive reviews. The musical adaptation of Carrie would also go on to be the subject of the Season 2 episode of Riverdale, Chapter 31, A Night to Remember. Carrie was released on video and DVD by MGM numerous times over the years, yet currently Shout Factory and Arrow Video are competing with 2 excellent releases. Shout Factory's 4K release comes in a 3-disc set with plenty of extras, including documentaries with the cast and crew and several image galleries. The 4K and Blu-ray release by Arrow Video in the UK features much of the same extras as the Shout Factory release, with the alternate opening sequence filmed for television as an additional extra. The set also features a video essay comparing the various adaptations of Carrie throughout the years. By a margin, it looks like Arrow wins the day on this one, but both releases are highly recommended. Brian De Palma's Carrie is a superb adaptation that, in my humble opinion, improves upon the novel and presents a tragic tale instead of a straightforward horror film. For a film that is essentially 75% build-up, the preceding scenes to Carrie's final wrath manage to be a tightly written, entertaining, and often darkly comedic coming-of-age story. While the book is a remarkable achievement in its own right, De Palma's film rightly extracts the basic narrative, delivering a beautifully stylish exploration of loneliness, repression, and tragedy. The ingenuity of the film is the fact that we know what's coming, and Brian De Palma knows that we know. His expert building of suspense leading up to Carrie's revenge would have made Hitchcock proud. And of course, the payoff does not disappoint, contrasting the slow-motion build-up with frenetic-paced action, rendering this prom night, and the film as a whole, truly unforgettable. Thanks so much for watching this video, everyone. Brian De Palma's Carrie is up there with one of the best Stephen King adaptations, and let's face it, the ultimate revenge fantasy. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave me a comment and let me know which Stephen King adaptation is your favourite. Please try those telekinetic powers to jab that like and subscribe button, and if mind powers don't work, just do it the old-fashioned way. I will be back soon with a new video, but until next time, be good to yourselves and each other and your classmates. I'll see you next time.